Today, we are going to be talking about a hot topic, insulin, and does it make you fat? For those of you who don't understand, insulin is essentially present when you eat carbohydrates, which made people start hating carbohydrates because apparently they're going to make you fat. And I'm here to tell you the truth, but I'm not going to just yet. All right. So let's talk about insulin. So, biggest thing I want you guys to understand is that insulin is simply a storage hormone. Now, I don't really actually like to think of it as a storage hormone. I like to think of it as more of a shuttling tool where essentially insulin is telling your body that nutrients need to go somewhere. But it's not telling it exactly where to store, but storage is the process in which what occurs from insulin being present. So whenever you have a carbohydrate, okay, insulin becomes present. Okay. The pancreas is going to send a signal to dump insulin. Okay. And its job is to move nutrients out of the bloodstream and into tissues. Okay. So the carbohydrates get broken down to into a sugar. Okay. And they're now circulating through the blood as blood glucose. And now insulin is going to tell them to go somewhere. It can go to the muscle, it can go to the liver. Those are going to be the primary places it wants to go. Okay. And in a healthy body, it should. We've talked about insulin sensitivity and resistance a lot. If you're a highly insulin sensitive person, those carbohydrates should go to muscle or liver. Okay. However, if they're not, what can happen is that if you have excess amount and the body has nowhere to put it, it can then be stored as adipose tissue or fat. Okay. So that is all the truth. Now, what we're also going to talk about is when insulin is present. Okay. You are not going to be burning fat. That's what people will say. And that is true because when insulin is present, the body is primarily utilizing carbohydrates as energy, as it is a main source of energy. So your body wants to utilize it. So it's going to switch from using body fat as energy to carbohydrate. But that does not mean because you're not burning fat in that moment after eating carbohydrates that you're not going to burn fat throughout the day. And we're going to get into this in more of a second. Now, what you also have to understand is that carbohydrates, right? When you first take them in, yes, you're utilizing them, but once you're done utilizing, it switches and you go back to utilizing stored body fat. So it's a temporary thing, a couple hours of where your blood glucose is potentially a little bit high. But once it drops and moves on, you switch back into utilizing body fat. Now, the biggest thing to also understand is that fat burning doesn't occur in this like moment. And it's not even like 24 hours, it's weeks and months and years of being in a caloric deficit. So just because there are these tiny spurts of time where you're not primarily using stored body fat, as energy, doesn't mean you're not going to burn body fat. Okay. And how it works is, like I said, you're utilizing carbohydrates and then you stop and you start using fat. You utilize carbohydrates, you're not using carbs, now you use fat. And over time, you're going to be burning fat as long as you are in a caloric deficit, which we have talked about before. Okay. It's all about energy balance. If you are burning more calories than you are consuming, you are in a energy deficit, meaning there's no way for your body to be able to store anything within that time frame simply because you're giving it less energy than it's using. So it has to use all the stuff you're giving it, right? Why would it store anything? It doesn't have the ability to. It has to use it, right? And so that's the biggest thing to understand is that it literally does not matter that there's moments when you're not burning fat, okay? Because even if those carbs were to somehow store as fat, which we'll get into in a second, they would then be burned off later. Right. So, yes, there is a point where insulin can rise, and maybe for whatever reason, your muscle and liver glycogen is full or you're insulin resistant and your body just sends those carbohydrates into fat storage. Let's just say that happens. Later that day, it's just going to be burned off. Like that's what's going to happen. So it's always the net balance is always going to be body fat loss, right? It's not going to be something you have to worry about. It's just these short moments of time. And so there's two people who can think insulin's good, insulin's bad. And the person A is the person who eats carbohydrates and just simply understands that as long as they're in a caloric deficit, they're going to burn body fat. And they do. The other person thinks, oh, carbs are bad, but their calories are too high and they don't burn body fat and they can't understand why. Right. So just because you don't eat carbs and you only use fat doesn't mean that you're going to end up in you're going to end up burning body fat. If you're in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain body fat or muscle or whatever, it could be. But either way, if you're trying to lose weight and your calories are too high, it doesn't matter where the food is coming from. Okay. So biggest thing to understand is that insulin isn't your enemy. It's actually my favorite hormone because I love being able to understand it. And when I do understand it, I'm able to utilize my body in ways I never have before. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to tell you guys is why not just eat fat though? Why not just eat fat and be in a caloric deficit? That's probably the question that came to mind. And the reason for that is because carbohydrates have a very good value in certain things when it comes to losing body fat, which I've spoken about in previous videos. But the main one being training performance and muscle retention. Carbohydrates in itself are anabolic, okay, because of the insulin, right? Once again, we want to be able to shuttle nutrients to the muscle. That if you have carbohydrates with protein, you're going to be able to send those amino acids to the muscle more efficiently, which is hopefully going to allow for better retention of muscle. So, therefore, that's why they're very beneficial to have. They're also going to be great for training performance. If you eat them before your workout, you're probably going to have better workouts, which also is going to help to retention of muscle. So to answer your question that you're probably thinking, why not just eat fat all the time and be in a deficit? It's for those reasons exactly. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. You can reach out to me at TommyPomaticoFitness@gmail.com or Tommy_Pomatico on Instagram. Until next time.